Hello, Olivia. Welcome to the School of Influence podcast. Thank you very much for welcoming us into your home today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this, the second ever episode.
Yeah, episode 2. I am also very excited. I did a little bit of prep for this podcast, and in doing so, I realized how little I know about biology. So it's made me very excited to be here to find out more about biology and more about your story, and hopefully the audience and the viewers can learn a little bit more about yourself as well. So it'd be good to kind of hear. I guess we can just start off with like where your passion for biology came from.
Yeah, okay, it's a good question because I think people assume that I have always been obsessed with biology, but I actually didn't really like biology in school. So it was only, I would say, probably when I was about 16, I started to realize that I actually liked biology. The school that I went to, I would say it wasn't always the easiest place to learn.
Can I ask you like what it was about the school that made it like not an easy place to learn? What was it that kind of like you didn't gel with there?
I think, well, it was a state school in special measures, so that gives you a bit of an idea of where things were at. So lessons were all over the place in terms of having different teachers. The teachers were very, very stretched, as they often are in schools. And probably I wasn't the best student either. I think there's a bit of accountability there. But I remember I dreaded my double science lessons. I think my sick days often coincided with the double science days. And yeah, so I felt like going through the year, I felt like I didn't really know much about biology. And it was only probably about a month before my GCSE biology exam. And I was thinking, I need to actually start learning some stuff here. And I was cramming for the exam. I was very last minute at GCSE, and I was cramming for the exam. And I have this with a lot of the students that I teach. It's only when they really get into it and they're cramming for the exam, and then they suddenly realise, why wasn't I putting the work in all along? Why wasn't I paying more attention in my lessons? Biology is actually really interesting. And I remember I can clearly picture where I was. I was just sat down in the corridors in the science department on a beanbag or something with my friends revising, and I'd got a flashcard about genetic engineering, and I remember going through it and I was thinking, this is really cool. And I think at that point I had considered I maybe wanted to do something sciencey, mathsy, arty. I think at that point the A levels I wanted to do were French, maths and art, and then I was considering biology as well, so quite different to what I ended up doing. And then I ended up choosing biology for A level. I think I switched out French for biology, did biology at A level at a different sixth form, which was incredible, had a brilliant teacher, like, absolutely amazing, big up Faye. And and then I started to realise, obviously GCSE exams came round. I did well in it. I got an A star and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can do this, maybe I like this. And then it was from when I did it at A level, and then I realised, okay, actually, I need to start exploring uni courses related to biology. And then it all went from there. So, yeah, and it wasn't something that I was obsessed with throughout childhood or life. I think my love for biology definitely grows as I get older.
That's very interesting that it was so late on. Like 16 is when you're kind of, that's the final years of that first batch of like education that you have in life. And I think that for a lot of people by then, they probably already have their passions. Like so you had the genetic engineering flashcard. What was it do you remember what it was that triggered your like curiosity for it?
Yeah, I think it's the relevance of this stuff in real life. I think some of the stuff that you learn at the start of the course, and you're learning cell structure and things like that, it kind of feels like at the time, why are we learning this? And then you realize as you get later on in the course, the reason you're learning that is to give you the foundation for the more interesting stuff and the more relevant real world stuff later on. And so that was kind of went from there.
And so it could have been French with Olivia.
It could have been anything. I would have said, actually, probably the most likely one would have been maths with Olivia.
Okay.
That was always my best subject.
Yeah.
And I liked art as well, which I still do. But I didn't do
Nice.
it for A level.
Yeah, fair enough. And so you studied it, and then at what point did you kind of realize that, wait a minute, this is now something that I'm passionate enough about that I want to share my knowledge with others?
I knew as soon as I did A level biology, I think in my second year of it, I think this happens with a lot of people who go into teaching or tutoring, is that you are the friend that helps everyone else out at school. So my friends would come to me and people in my class and I would explain topics to them, a bit nerdy, and I was like, oh, I really enjoy teaching. I think I can help people. I think in my second year of sixth form, I became a subject mentor for biology. And basically, as soon as I went to uni, I started tutoring. And I did it through a company, and it was when I did that I realized, okay, I actually really like teaching, and I really like teaching biology. And then ever since that point, I feel like as soon as I went to uni, it was kind of in the back of my mind that I will make a career out of this. And I always used to joke to my friends, I'll probably end up as a teacher or something. And at that point, the plan definitely wasn't to go into teaching, but I thought maybe in later in life or something, I'll become a teacher. And obviously, here I am now, and I've built my whole career around biology, which never thought would happen.
Yeah, and you definitely seem, from looking at your content, you definitely seem like an expert in this space. And obviously, like teaching, I read somewhere when I was doing the research for this podcast that your resources have been downloaded over 500,000 times.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I think that it's probably closer to 1 million. I think it's over 1 million now, actually, which is really crazy to think. And do you know what the most surreal thing is? Sometimes I'm scrolling myself through TikTok. This has only really happened in the last year, I'd say. And I see a post and I'm pretty sure I recognize that. And I look at it and it's my notes or something. And then I had it in exam season. I was actually having a really bad week. And I was just, sometimes you get in a bit of a rut and you think, oh, why am I doing this? And then it was one specific post that someone had made about how my resources were saving them in revision for their exams. And then I went into the comments, and the comments were all talking about me and how useful it was. And it still blows my mind, because I think when you teach online, when you do social media, when you make this stuff, you see the numbers, you don't really think, that's people who are actually using my stuff. And then the reality of that is weird, but it's amazing. I never thought that I would be able to help people like that. And hopefully one day it'll be even more people that I can help.
The impact of that alone, like, that's massive. Like, congratulations.
Thanks.
For the amount of lives that you would have helped for the better. You made a positive impact on their learning and revision and results as well. What is it that you think, I obviously know your content, I'm aware of what you do, but what is it you think about your teaching style that resonates so well with like these students in this age group?
I think it comes from a place of my own style of learning in school. I think that I really struggled looking at a big textbook, for example. I was so overwhelmed by that. And I always felt like I didn't study in normal ways. I always felt like my brain worked a little bit differently, and I liked to have everything broken down very visually, and I like to try and make it as fun as I could. And so I think it's just having a different style of learning. So for example, my absolute favorite days are when I crack out the Play-Doh and the pipe cleaners. I have many boxes in my office just of random bits of recycling and pipe cleaners and Play-Doh and all stuff like that. And I think doing that in a visual way and just having a different way of explaining things, and for students to have a different way of learning, that's my favorite thing. And with the things like the memory tricks as well, making mnemonics, acronyms, stories and associations, when I teach that, it's a way of getting the students involved who maybe they don't know the answers, and it becomes very difficult to contribute. And if they kind of get lost throughout the lesson and they kind of feel overwhelmed by it, but if you then give them something and you say, can we come up together with a unique way? Can we look at that word and break it down? Or can you help me come up with a mnemonic or something? It's just a way of engaging them in a different way and then getting them back into it. I just enjoy bringing that creativity into it.
So that was something that I assume you didn't actually have in school. That was something that a system that you kind of like, an initiative that you took yourself to kind of break down things that little bit further and create this visual way of learning. And was that something that you would then implement in your own revision? It wasn't something that was kind of like no one inspired you to do that?
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone did. I think it was just kind of a natural thing for me. I've always been, I was always quite a creative person. and you would always find me like painting something or making something. I used to say I wanted to be an inventor, I think because I liked making things. I never really had that sort of learning in school. Probably a bit here and there, but not in science, not in biology. Kind of, you sit down in your lesson, you look at a PowerPoint, you answer some exam questions. Never had a clue what was going on. So yeah, I think that's just kind of just a natural way for me to teach, because it's the natural way that I learn best. It was why I was always able to, I think, do things last minute. I'm not saying I recommend this to other students, but I would always do things last minute. But I think because I had quite an effective way of learning, well, a way that worked for me, different things work for different people, but I was able to kind of take that and harness that, and just went from there.
I love that you've carried it through as well, and like you're now, you've got your own business stuff, and you're still able to get the Play-Doh out and the pipe cleaners and play with that. There's probably something to that that's actually very good for adults to connect with that side of ourselves, even at this stage in life.
100%. I think there needs to be more play-based stuff. When I taught in a school, it's so funny, the lessons that were the most fun were the things that you think 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds don't want to do, things you think maybe something is too childish for them. It's not. They love it, and I would love it. And anything that gets them moving, doing things in different ways, coming up with funny little stories and games based around it. I mean, if you as a teacher are getting bored with what you're teaching, that's when you know, okay, I need to come up with a different way to teach this, because if you're getting bored teaching it, the kids are going to be way more bored. So it's just, and also at school you have such a range of kids in the class, and it's about trying to engage the ones who learn in a different way and maybe normal school doesn't work for them. I always absolutely loved teaching the students who just haven't had good experiences with education, haven't had good experiences with biology, think they don't like science, think that they can't do it. That's my favourite.
Yeah, and it's a topic which is being looked at a bit closer now, and I think that we're kind of more exploring other ways to engage students. And again, like, I'm very fortunate to be working with people like yourself who are forward thinking in that space as well, and hopefully having an impact on the way we do teach. And obviously you've got the results to prove how effective what you do is, which is amazing. So what was your experience like teaching? Like, did you get to use that sort of stuff in the classroom?
Yeah, I think with teaching, it's a lot of trial and improvement and trying different things. I felt like it took me a long time to figure out what really worked for me. I taught in the school that I worked at for 3 years, and it kind of massively varied how I would teach. I've forgotten what the question was.
So when you were teaching, did you get to implement the style of teaching which you would, like your revision methods and stuff like that, which we were just discussing? Did you get to implement those when in your time as a teacher? What was your time as a teacher like, basically?
I would try to bring it in as much as I could. So I would always use I felt like I spent a long time planning my lessons and stuff. I think that is a typical new teacher sort of thing anyway. You have to spend a long time doing it. But I think probably one of the reasons that teaching wasn't sustainable for me is that I found it difficult to just use someone else's PowerPoint, use someone else's resource. I wanted to do it in my own way. I wanted to think about, I felt like I would go to sleep at night and I'd be thinking about different activities that I could do to teach a topic. And I think there were some things that I did that worked. I think there were some things that I did that probably didn't work. As with any teacher, like I said, you trial and you improve as you go. But that was really, really insightful. And I think I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now without that experience in the classroom of actually seeing what you're doing in practice with teaching a range of students as well. Those that, thrive and in the current education system and are going for A stars and going for Oxbridge, but also those who are trying to pass and that they have this really negative attitude, and it's not their fault either. That's the system. It isn't necessarily designed for everyone. So I think that experience of the range was really useful for me.
Mm-hmm. And what years did you teach? Did you teach specifically A level students, or was it like GCSE and like secondary?
Yeah, so GCSE and A level.
Okay, and did you enjoy working in that environment?
In teaching generally?
Yeah, in teaching generally. Obviously, like you're very passionate and good at like teaching in general, but like working in a school environment.
Yeah, so I was really lucky. The school that I worked at was great. There was a lot of support. The pupils were incredible. My colleagues were incredible, and I did enjoy it. I think I think the problem is that my personality type, in that I am actually quite very actually introverted, and so I think that this is a thing of I can't spend my time around people all the time. I need so long to recharge. And I just think, as much as I enjoyed it, and when I was in the class I enjoyed it, I just found that afterwards I was just exhausted. And I think just keeping that up all day, that was what I found tough. But then I equally think that was one of the things that at some points with certain pupils became a strength, because I felt like I did understand more the kids who don't want to be picked on in class, even though everyone tells you should. The kids that would sit there so anxious all lesson because they're scared that they're going to get asked something and they know the answer, but they actually just are going to stumble on their words and don't want to say it out loud. You've got to find different ways of engaging them. And actually, most of the time, those kids are concentrating, but they'll be not concentrating if they think that they're going to get picked on. So it's just, I really enjoyed making those kinds of pupils. I mean, I wasn't perfect, but I hope that I made more of those kind of students feel comfortable. And so I liked that. It was very, very rewarding. I think it took me leaving teaching to realize how much impact I'd had, because I think at the time, I'm very critical of myself. And I think at the time I always think, how could I have done that lesson better? Am I doing enough? You can always do more as a teacher. And I mean, I would work until 10 p.m. most nights and weekends and during the holidays. It didn't help that I was always doing this stuff alongside it. But it was when I left and, the cards come in and you read what they say and how they've helped you. And it's always the ones that you think, oh, they probably hate my lessons. And then they write you paragraphs of how you inspired them. And I think it's always a thing of making them feel seen and understood, not necessarily just the way you teach in terms of teaching them the content. Obviously, that's a huge focus of mine, but it's actually just making them feel like they are capable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine with science as well, like a class could probably be like quite hard to manage, like because of did you have like a lab environment that you would be teaching in, or was there anything like that?
Yeah. So my classroom had a lab in it, so half of it was the actual classroom area and then half of it was the labs. Some chaos in the labs. That was one thing. That was a learning curve, doing the practicals. You really have to put a brave face on, because I would say in school I wasn't the most, in school myself, I never knew what was going on in the practicals. I have memories of my teacher shouting like, who contaminated the Benedict solution? And I remember at the time I had no idea what Benedict solution was, but I do now, and it makes me laugh knowing what practical that was. We had to do some practicals with wood lice, and I am so icked out by insects and stuff. And I remember just looking at them and thinking, this is just horrible.
What did the practical
it was
involve?
funny. It was great. You had this choice chamber thing, and it was investigating the responses of wood lice to different conditions like light and humidity. And this was with an A-level class who I really miss that class. They were great. And so, it was a small class at A-level. You have smaller classes anyway. So I wasn't worried, but it's just that like, oh God, am I going to have to handle the wood lice here?
Yeah, facing your fears.
Yeah, but you had to kind of just put on a brave face in the thing, and this is what you love doing, is putting wood lice in different compartments and measuring their responses. But
amazing. With teaching biology, did you ever have to deal with anyone who was squeamish?
Oh yeah, definitely. And that would have been me in school. I hated dissections and everything.
But yeah, did you ever have anyone passing out or?
No, I don't think so, actually. I think I got quite lucky with that sort of thing. There were definitely people who you had to really encourage gently to do the practical, and occasionally people who opt out of it for other reasons as well. But
Yeah, ethical reasons and stuff, I assume.
Yeah.
What practicals did you do, like for on a biology standpoint?
Oh, a huge range. So you've kind of got, well, you've testing different foods. It sounds quite boring when you say it. Different things like, I'm trying to think, testing photosynthesis, rate of photosynthesis. The thing is with GCSE biology, the practicals you do never work as they're meant to work. At A level, there were some more interesting ones. There's a urine test one, and obviously you don't test actual urine, you can't do that, but I just think it's such a core experience for teachers. I think every teacher has pretended that it's actual urine and pretended to drink it or something as well, and seen the class go mad. I was trying to think what else there is.
What would they use instead of urine?
Do you know what? I think probably just a sugar solution and dyed or something. I can't even remember. Apple juice or something.
So they would make it look like urine and then do something with it.
Yeah, you were testing it for glucose.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I remember we had this other one we did at school with what are those little the petri, is it the dishes with the
the petri dishes.
Petri dish. Yeah. And they were like, they said like, find something in the classroom that you think is going to be like the dirtiest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did that in that exact same way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have any, did like people come up with any crazy ideas? I remember one of my mates was like, let's get like stick it under our fingernails. He heard that underneath your fingernail is the dirtiest part of the body. But the teacher did specifically say like, don't do it anything like on your body. But he was like, nah, sorry, we're going to do it under the fingernails.
Yeah, those practicals are always fun.
Yeah, it was quite, I don't know. I remember science for us was just like, it was always a wild time. And I remember our teachers saying like, if you carry on like this, you're going to fail.
Oh yeah, my science lessons in school were absolute chaos. I never knew what was going on ever in practicals. Just didn't have a clue what was going on.
Yeah,
I did at A level, but not at GCSE. No clue.
it's amazing that you've been through that and then you've come out to be like so involved in it and so passionate about it on the back end as well.
Yeah, I wish more students realised that just because they don't enjoy it now doesn't mean that they're never going to. I think a lot of people actually recently, I've had a lot of messages from people saying, I never thought I would do A-level biology or do a biology related degree. And then I came to your classes and realised I actually do enjoy biology, and now I'm going to do A-level biology or, a degree in something biology related, which is always good.
There's something to that. Like, why is it that when we're younger and in school and having all this kind of knowledge like thrust upon us, we're not interested in it? But then like now, even when I was looking at your content and stuff, like everyone who is part of School of Influence, whose content I look at, I'm fascinated by. It's like, why do we not want to learn it when we're younger? Whereas, I mean, it could be down to like what you were saying about, the way we're taught, but like, why is it like so much more interesting to us when we're older? Or yeah.
I think this all the time. I wish I could go back to school and actually listen in a lot of lessons. I wish there was a sort of, I was going to say adult school, but that's uni, isn't it? But as in like when you're not in education, when you're not studying for exams. I mean, I love learning. I learn all the time. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. A lot of them are biology related, but a lot of them also aren't. And I just lap up all that information about whatever I'm interested in. I spend a lot of my time now just learning random things, and it's great, and I just wish I did that more in school. But I think it's different when you're in a school sitting down all day, and different teaching styles, and not every teaching style is going to work for you, and then distracted by your friends, and there's a lot of things as well depending on who's in your class and who you're friends with, as people often don't want to come across as too nerdy or too into it, and which is so sad because it's cool to be interested in what you're learning. It's cool to be passionate about it and to want to do well. But I think there's a lot of that thing in school of like, oh, I did no revision, You see that all the time now, kids saying they've done no revision, and you look at their work, and yes, you have, of course you have. You just don't want to come across as a try-hard, which, I get it. I was there.
Yeah. And I think like now, like objectively looking at it, is like, it is actually cool to be smart. That discipline that you can implement in those years is probably going to pay off down the line.
Yeah, definitely.
But you've also, like, as well as obviously everything that you've taught yourself and learned about biology and everything you've done, in that respect, you've also learned how to run a business and like how to do social media and how to edit and all that sort of stuff. Like, did you have a creative interest in content, I guess, when you were younger growing up? Like, was there ever any vision to be doing anything on social media alongside what you were going to be doing as your main hustle?
That's a really good question. I wish there was more education in school for people who want to be self-employed. Not, I think there's a lot about wanting to be an entrepreneur and run these massive businesses, but there's not much about if you want to be self-employed and you just want to be a one-person thing and like a freelancer sort of thing. I think I did always know that I was going to end up in, you know, some sort of self-employment doing, not necessarily, I wouldn't have ever thought that I'd be doing anything to do with social media, but I did always think that I would go down a not the traditional corporate job route. I just think with the way my brain works, it just suits that self-employment sort of thing. And there's a lot of it in my family as well. So yeah, I think I always knew really that I wanted to do that. And I think when I went into teaching, that was in the back of my mind. When I went into teaching, I didn't think I would be doing it for 30 years in a school. I thought, I'm just going to try this. I think there's a lot to be learned from it. I wanted to give it a go, see how I find it. And I think the long-term thing was always, I will end up self-employed one day.
And at what stage did you because if you were tutoring alongside what you were doing at school, at what stage did you realize the power of social media and how that could leverage your business and get you to the level of success that you've got to today?
So there was one moment, and it was, I had always posted a bit on social media while I was doing tutoring at uni, and so as I was finishing uni, I started uni in 2017, so finished around COVID sort of time, lockdown and stuff. And it was at that point when I realised there are all these kids who were out of school who actually, a lot of them want to learn. A lot of them would have been doing GCSEs, didn't do their GCSEs, were doing A levels, were actually really eager to learn. And I started posting some bits on Instagram to try and get people to join. I ran this whole Google Classroom thing, and I ran some classes, like webinar sort of things, over the summer. And I did that, and I realised, okay, you can. But it was quite a lot of work to actually find people. And then I went into teaching, and they always knew from the start that my school always knew that I had social media, that I did that I was self-employed on the side basically, and they were happy with that. And it must have been, I don't know when it was, September or October sort of time, I decided I need to start to post on TikTok now. Everyone was telling me, go on TikTok, try and go viral or whatever. And it was easier then. It was very different. And I think one of the first videos I did, which I look back now and it cringes me out so much, because it was a video of me, and it said something like, do you need help with biology? And it was a song in the background, and then I literally jumped onto the screen and pointed at myself and said, I can help you. Obviously didn't actually say it because it was the song in the background. And I looked at that and I think, well, good job I did post that. It doesn't matter if it cringes me out now, because I think that got about 4 million views, and I went from about 100 followers on TikTok to must have gone to over 200,000 basically overnight. And I remember just watching the followers go up and watching the views go up and calling my family, I can't believe this is happening. And then it all went from there. And it was at that point onwards I realised, wow, the potential of this. And then, as with all things social media, there are ups and downs, and then you might go through a phase where you're getting a lot of views, and then it dips again, especially because what I do is quite seasonal, where everyone wants to watch stuff around exam season. Then in the summer, for example, not as many people are interested. And then every time it gets to exam season again, and I think, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe that's social media for me. I've had my time of it. And then you do a video. I had another one, it must have been a year or two ago now, and it was about a daily exam question thing. And this was on Instagram. I hadn't got that many followers on Instagram at this point. I think I must have had about 10,000. I mainly focused on TikTok. And then I did this one video about, I'm starting an exam question series for GCSE and A Level, and talked about what I'd be bringing into it with the memory tricks and all of that sort of thing. And that must have again got a few million views. And so all my followers came in from these viral videos. And that's how I was able to kind of blow up really quickly on it. And the power of that is amazing.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, it totally makes sense because that is exactly where your target market is going to be. And that's one thing I love, and I could see like when I first came across your social media, I could see like the marketability of you, because it was like you have a core audience. You know, your audience range must stem from what, like 14 to 21, or like that at
Yeah.
the widest, or what do you kind of think that the people you're speaking to are, besides those people in the courses that you're giving the revision for?
Would you know, I actually have a surprising number of parents follow me and
Okay.
watch my videos and learn from them. So obviously I've got everyone doing their GCSEs and A levels is a big part of my audience. But then teachers, parents, I've had a lot of messages from parents saying, "Oh, thank you so much. I've learned this particular thing and I've been able to." So, but parents, when you don't know what's going on at school, and some parents desperately want to support their children and they don't really know how to, and then they watch my videos and go, "Okay, she's gone through this 6-mark question. I'm going to go through this." And they go through it with their child, or just feel like they understand a little bit more. So I think there's quite a few of those that follow me, and
Yeah.
other tutors as well.
Well, there you go. That brings a whole new aspect of how I can present you to brands and things as well, which is great. So, there are a couple of things on biology I want to get to, just to get your take on. But before we do that, I wanted to ask, like, where do you kind of see your business and your like social media going? Are you going to kind of expand beyond biology, do you think, or like, what's your plan for the future?
It's a good question, and I've been thinking about that a lot recently. And I think one thing that I need to move on to is YouTube. So, big focus for me for the year ahead is to try and build up my YouTube. I posted kind of impulsively must have been around 2020, and I think I got about 10,000. I think I'm currently got 12,000 subscribers just from those videos. And I need to really get into posting more on YouTube, because I think the kind of long-term potential for that content on there. I think the good thing about TikTok and Instagram is I often reach students who aren't necessarily looking to revise. And then it's about actually bringing them away from social media sometimes into classes. And, I want to run a lot more free classes to help as many students as I can. Obviously, I have to earn a living, right? So, but in an ideal world, I would run as many free classes as I could to make education more and more accessible for people. I think for now, I'm focused on biology. I do get a lot of requests for other subjects, and I think I could see myself maybe working more with other teachers and tutors who are specialists in their subjects. But I don't know that I would. I think I'll stick to biology, because I like to be really specialist in that. I think one thing that I get a lot of enjoyment from, actually, in my classes and stuff, is not necessarily just the teaching side of it. I love the teaching side, and I especially love the creative side, and I need to do more of that in my content when I get Play-Doh out and stuff like that. But I also just really enjoy working with a certain type of students. So normally it's I always say, like, the shy kids in school, the ones who'd be described as a pleasure to teach, but needs to speak up more in class. That was all my school reports as a kid. A pleasure to teach, but she needs to speak up more. AKA, you do your work, but like the teachers don't really know you. And actually, you get away with a lot. You get away with not doing a lot and not being that engaged, but they think just because you're quiet, you must be taking it all in, but it isn't always true. And I think those kids are the ones who often slip under the net, because they're not actually visibly causing any problems in the class, and the teachers are stretched, so they have to focus on the kids who are causing disruption, or the really, really top end kind of going for Oxbridge sort of thing. But it's the kids who maybe need support and they need someone to understand them, but maybe they would be scared of going to, or anxious about joining a group tuition session or having one-to-one tuition because of the social aspect of that. And obviously, I really relate to that, because I never had a tutor in school, and that idea of being on camera would have made me incredibly anxious. So I want to do more for those types of kids. And I also really enjoy just in my classes that I do, just having general chats with them. I always end up staying behind at the end for about 20 minutes and just rambling on about random stuff and then asking me questions about things, and we chat things, time management, organization. And I absolutely love working with students who really struggle with time management and stuff, because I think, and I always had a bit more sympathy, I think, as a teacher for the kids who didn't do their homework or who weren't doing these things on time or their folders were really messy. There's a difference when they just, you can tell they just don't care, but you know the kids who they desperately care, they desperately want to do well. And this was me in school. I physically couldn't do it. I couldn't stick to a revision timetable. No amount of, oh, make a to-do list, make a revision timetable, that would never work. And I absolutely love working with those kinds of students and making them feel understood. Maybe their brain works in a slightly different way, and just helping them feel like, no, there is a way, we just need to find what works for you. So I would like to do a lot more with that sort of thing in future as well. But I don't really know where I'll go with it, because I feel like for me, things, I just take it year on year. Things change. I don't know that I'll always be teaching GCSE and A Level Biology. I love education. I love learning. I love what I do on social media because of the creativity it gives me. But I know whatever I do will always be something creative that gives me that sort of outlet and some sort of learning, I'm sure.
Yeah, creative and inspiring others is like it's a winning formula there.
Yeah, I want to help as many people as I can.
With the things you were mentioning there about like time management and sticking to a schedule and all that sort of stuff, have you cracked that code now?
I am much, much better. The thing is, I would say, is it does take me a lot of energy, and it is very draining, the systems that I have to have in place in order to help me, I always feel like, to help me function like a normal person. I have like different things, like I use Notion, I use Google Calendar. My Google Calendar is absolutely mental. Like, it is the color coding every 15 minutes is, it's not planned, it's tracked. That's the difference.
Okay.
So people go, do you really plan your life to the 15 minutes? I say, no, I just track as it happens so I can see where I'm spending my time.
So you put in what you've done as opposed to planning ahead.
Yeah. And
That's
that just gives
interesting.
me a bit more of an awareness of
Yeah.
what I'm doing. And you know, you have to put on your Google Calendar, you scrolled for the last 2 hours. It makes you want to not do it.
Guilty.
So
yeah.
I think, yeah, I have very elaborate systems to keep me organized, to keep me prioritized, because it's something that I really naturally do not do very well at all. And I think a lot of students just look at what I'm doing, and the amount of conversations I've had with colleagues that I worked with, and they say, well, you're so organized. I say, oh, you have no idea what it takes to come across this organized, the level of, you know, intervention I have to have with myself. But I think working as a teacher helped me do that, because you have to be organized. You there's no way. You can't not plan your lessons. You can't not get your reports done. You know, you've got to do this stuff. You've got to be there. And I think that, as hard as it was in those 3 years, more so at the start when you've got so many things to think about as a new teacher, it taught me so much and so many skills. And I'm still working on it and still trying to find the best ways that work for me. But I mean, yeah, it's not something that worries me anymore. And I wish I could go back and tell the me who, I would get so upset because people, like family, teachers, would get so frustrated at me. And it is really frustrating when you want to help someone and you're like, why are you not doing this? Why have you not handed your coursework in? Why have you missed the deadline again? Just block some time in and do it. And then often the tips that you take are from people who can do organisation, and those tips don't work for people who can't do organisation. And they're saying, make a to-do list, make a revision timetable. And then I would just feel worse and worse that I couldn't do that. And it was this whole negative spiral. Mm-hmm. And it took the tips from the people who actually don't naturally do time management very well. It took taking their tips to actually help me get through that.
And everyone's different. Everyone's got like their own way of managing their time. I think it's very rare you'll find someone who is like super organized. They will be able to follow like such a strict schedule. I remember when I used to forget my PE kit at school, my head of year like once just gave me a lecture about using sticky notes, post-it notes. And that's something that has like kind of stuck with me, and it is like very useful in later life. I always find that if it's written down, the chances are I'm gonna do it at some stage. Whereas if it's just a thought, it could end up anywhere. So
the thing for me was when someone told me you don't need to make a timetable to stick to because you're setting yourself up for failure. You won't stick to it. It's just to go with what your brain wants. So for me, like I tell students that if it doesn't work for you, some people say follow your school timetable when you're doing revision, right? So you've got an hour on this subject, an hour on that subject. That works for some people. Whereas I tell students, if you are trying and that isn't working for you, think about that and maybe try taking a whole day or a whole half a day to just really get absorbed in one subject. So that's what I do now. You know, I will spend a whole day filming for social media, or I'll spend a whole day doing admin, and I just allow myself to get absorbed into that, and that's what works for my brain.
Yeah, and it gives you a good chance to actually make progress, move forward, and then you can kind of relax a little bit.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's too many friction points otherwise. If I'm saying I'm going to do an hour of admin in the morning and then I'm going to do an hour filming and an hour editing, between those hours, I mean, it takes me about half an hour to get into it, and then I'm just getting going, and then I think I've got to switch to something else. And then during that switch, there's potential for distraction, and you've got to take time to get into the other thing. It just doesn't work for me. It works for some people, and that's okay. Different things work for different people.
I hear you. Speaking of time, I know we're conscious of time for this podcast. I had a load of things I wanted to chat to you about. I'm thinking, let's start off with the biology side of things. Like, if you can teach us something here today, which our listeners might not know.
How about I teach you a topic that a lot of students find difficult, right? So something like the heart.
Perfect.
What were you like in GCSE biology?
I remember we dissected a heart once and finding it fascinating. But yeah, I wasn't, I don't know. I don't, even like looking at your content, I'm like, I don't really remember anything like this from like GCSE. So I'm a blank canvas right now.
Okay. So if I asked you anything about how blood flows through the heart, do you have any words that come to mind?
Different color tubes.
Okay.
Arteries.
Arteries. Yeah, as a type of blood vessel.
Yeah. Arteries. I think that's pretty much all I've got. I'm sure as you'll say some stuff, it might come back to me, but that's all I've got for now.
Okay. So let's imagine you were doing your GCSEs and there was a question that said, describe the flow of blood through the heart or something, right? Let's see if we can make you actually be able to get full marks in a question like this. So I'm guessing you would have no idea where to start with that.
The flow of blood through the heart. Now,
so where does it go into? Where does the blood? How does it get into the heart? Any ideas?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I feel like I should know this now you're saying this, but no.
That's okay. So let's start with the very basics. So the heart, you've got two sides of it, the left and the right. So you've got 4 chambers. Each of those sides has got one chamber and then another chamber, right? Can you picture kind of roughly what a heart
I can
looks
picture
like?
roughly what it looks like, yeah.
Okay, so we've got 4 chambers in the heart, and you've got blood vessels going in to the top chamber. It goes through, and then it will go out of a different blood vessel, right? And when you look at it on a diagram, the left side of the heart will actually be on the right side of the paper. And that's because when you look at it on a diagram, if you look at me right now, my heart, if I hold up my left hand, you see that as your right. So that's why it's flipped.
I see.
So when you look at a heart on a diagram, it's like you're looking at it in a person who's standing in front of you. You've got to remember that it's flipped.
Okay.
So I'll use the memory tricks on you because I think that's my favorite way to teach, right? We'll start with an acronym. Acronym is LORD, left oxygenated, right deoxygenated.
Yeah.
So you've got these 2 sides. Can you remember how many chambers in each side?
2 on each side.
2 chambers on each side. You've got blood vessels going in, blood vessels going out. So left oxygenated, that means that blood is going to have a lot of oxygen in it. Where do you think it's got that oxygen from?
From our respiratory system.
From the air, so the lungs,
yeah.
Right? So the blood that comes into the left side of the heart, which you actually see as the right side on the diagram, is oxygenated. And on the right side of the heart, it's not got much oxygen on it. It's deoxygenated. Where do you think that oxygen has gone?
Out of our nose and mouths?
We don't breathe it out because we breathe it in to then use your cells to need it.
So the oxygen's gone in somewhere in the heart.
It's gone around the body. It's got pumped to the body, right? So we've got this double circulatory system. Don't worry about that term. Basically, we've got half of the heart is got blood with a lot of oxygen in. Half of the heart has not got much oxygen in. Okay, so that's your starting point, right? Next thing I would say is a different acronym. So we've got Lord, and then the next acronym we've got is VAVA. So this, if you take one side of the heart, this will describe the flow of blood through that. So V is for vein, which is a type of blood vessel. So then you're talking about the tubes.
Yep.
So it will go in through the vein. You can also remember vein has got the word in. V-E-I-N,
in through the veins.
So it goes into the heart through the veins on both sides of the heart.
Yep.
Okay. Then you've got A. A is for atrium. So this is like the first chamber of the heart. So it goes in through A.
Atrium, artery, vein.
Vein. Goes in through a vein.
Yeah.
Into the atrium.
Yeah.
The atria. And then the next one, V-A-V, is for ventricles. These look like V for ventricles. These look like little V's in the heart, at the bottom of the heart. So it goes vein, atrium, the chamber, ventricles, the other chamber, and then it goes out, A, for what's the other type of blood vessel? We've had vein.
Did I say it? Artery?
Arteries, yeah.
Okay.
So that's a flow of blood through the heart. It goes in through the veins, into the atrium, into the ventricles, and then it gets pumped out of the arteries.
Got you.
Can you deal with another level? Just one more?
Well, as long as you're not going to test me on this, then it's fine.
I might give you a couple quiz questions. So the next thing is you don't just call them the veins or the arteries. They've got special names for the ones that go in and out of the heart. So when it's going to the lungs or coming back from the lungs, we use the word pulmonary.
Okay.
So think about this, right? So a pulmonary artery...
PA.
Pulmonary artery is going, we said it's at the end, so it's going out of the heart. Where is that going to be going, do you think? Pulmonary artery. What does it say pulmonary means?
Wait, hold on. My mind's gone blank. So pulmonary is from the lungs.
No. Relating to the lungs,
Relating to the lungs, right.
Artery is going away from the heart.
Okay.
So pulmonary artery is going to be going away from the heart to the lungs.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, that makes sense.
And then the pulmonary vein, remember I said vein, V-E-I-N, in, so it's going into the heart. From where? Pulmonary. So it's from the
lungs.
From the lungs. So now you know what the pulmonary artery is and what the pulmonary vein is. So when we go back to that thing of VAVA, and I said vein, atrium, ventricle, artery, if we're talking about the left side of the heart, left oxygenated from our acronym LORD, that blood is going to be coming in from the lungs because that's where it gets oxygenated. So what's the word for lungs? Pulmonary.
Yep.
And if it's coming into the heart, in is in what vessel? A vein.
Yeah.
So it'll be the pulmonary vein.
Okay.
And then it will go through the left atrium, the left ventricle, and then it will go out via what type of blood vessel?
Artery.
An artery.
Yeah.
But it's not called the pulmonary artery because it's not going to the lungs. So this is just the aorta that goes to the rest of the body.
Okay.
And then from there, it'll come back around into the heart through a type of vein called the vena cava.
Okay.
It'll go through, remember, Lord, so right deoxygenated. So it's gone to the body, the oxygen has gone into the cells. This is deoxygenated blood now. And so it goes in through the vena cava, through the right atrium, right ventricle, and this time it needs to go to the lungs.
So pulmonary artery.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now you're a pro at the heart.
Wow. Now I kind of want to ask you how the blood comes into how the oxygen comes into our blood from the lungs. Because of the pulmonary, talking about the pulmonary, like blood going to the lungs from the heart, but how does the oxygen get into our blood, absorbed through our lungs?
So the oxygen is in the air, right? And then it comes down as you breathe in. And then, have you heard of alveoli?
A what word, sorry?
Alveoli.
Alveoli. I was thinking of alioli, like the garlic stuff.
Love that.
Yeah.
So these are the little kind of air sacs basically.
Okay.
And then the oxygen comes in there.
In the lungs.
In the lungs,
Yeah.
yeah. So these expand as you breathe in.
Uh-huh.
You've got a high concentration of oxygen in the lungs and a lower in the blood, which will be in the capillaries, which are like the branches of very small and thin, tiny, one cell thick sort of thing. Don't need to go into that.
Okay.
And then it goes from a high concentration to a low concentration just by a process called diffusion.
Right. Okay.
That's quite simple. So it just comes in via diffusion, and then it gets pumped around the body.
Into the body. Very interesting.
Can I ask you a question?
Is it to do with what we just spoke about?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you know? I ask you this because it's such an important topic, and I think nobody really in kind of real life would know what it is. Maybe you would. What is oxygen used for? Why do we need oxygen?
Let me just have a moment just to think about that. What is it? Well, I know it's the air that keeps us alive.
Yes.
But what it's used for, like what the body uses it
Yeah, why
for.
does the body need oxygen? Oxygen is in the air. We take that into the lungs, into the alveoli. It goes into the blood, but why?
Is it something to do with our cells, like needing it?
Yeah. Do you know what the process is that the cells use it for?
No.
Begins with an R.
Begins with an R.
You'll know the word when I say it.
Reproduction?
Not reproduction, respiration.
I nearly said respiration, but I was like, no,
Yeah.
that's the lungs.
No,
That's the
yeah,
lungs.
see, in GCSE and A Level Biology, respiration is the series of chemical reactions that happens in all of your cells, every single cell, and it requires oxygen for aerobic respiration.
Wow.
And that ultimately releases energy from things like glucose.
Okay.
So that's also why you eat. So you need sugars, glucose. You break them down, you absorb them, they go to your cells, then you've got the glucose there and other molecules, and they go through the process of, we call them the respiratory substrate. So they're used in the process of respiration using oxygen, and that releases energy from them. That's what we would say at GCSE at A level. It's a bit more complex, but you get the idea.
Okay. Nice.
And now you're a biology pro. You could do a GCSE biology paper.
I'm going to need some of your resources after this, I think. That's really interesting. I'm glad that we've everyone will have learned something.
There we
most
go.
people,
Every
unless
day's a
they're
school
other.
day.
Exactly. Every day is a school day in this job. Seriously, is there something that isn't taught in the curriculum for biology that you feel should be taught in schools?
Where do I start?
Or that many things?
There's so much. I mean, I think if I was designing the curriculum, it would be completely different because there's so. Actually, I want to start with there are a lot of things that are really useful that's in the curriculum. Things like vaccines, that's really important. And in order to understand vaccines, you've got to understand how the immune system works. So I think that's good that that's in there to do with different pathogens that cause diseases and stuff. That's really useful as well. I think things to do with one of my favourite topics to teach at GCSE is the menstrual cycle and the role of hormones within that. I think that's really, really useful for everyone to understand. But there's a lot in there. I mean, there's so much. I think there could be more taught related to conservation. And that is in the curriculum, right? But I just don't think that it's in there necessarily in the right way. I think a lot of it comes down to the way the system is with exams, is you are, in order to get through it, to actually study it at a high level, you have to get through the exams, right? And in order to get through the exams, you've got to learn how to answer exam questions, and so you kind of get wrapped up in that rather than actually learning for the love of learning. But I think that there could be more to do with that, and even things like just more detail to do with that, conservation, global warming. But like I said, that is in there already.
What, from a biology standpoint, what, just like off the top of your head, like a few things that you think would be good to be included when it comes to like conservation?
That's a good question, because I'm just trying to think what is already in there. So if we take GCSE, for example, you've got what global warming is and what climate change is and the difference between those. And actually you do learn a bit about pollution and the response to that. But I think my problem with it is that you are then learning to answer an exam question, whereas what I think would be useful is more real life stuff about actually critically thinking about the things that you see in the news and on social media, and you could say that maybe there is an element of that because you've got application, you've got different types of questions where you have to interpret the data, but it all comes down to, can you hit the points on the mark schemes? Whereas I think more of a general learning it for that, not necessarily even to be in an exam, I think would be really useful, because I mean, that's a whole nother thing, is the exam system obviously isn't necessarily fit for purpose. But yeah, I think that would definitely be. I think we need to look at the general public and sometimes think about maybe the failings of the education system in terms of, what fundamental things people just don't know. And it's actually really important to trust science. And in order to trust science, you need to have the basics right from school.
Yeah, it's only like later in life you start to reflect on like your behaviors and how you can actually be a cause for good in this world and actually like try and be a bit more sustainable and all that sort of stuff. Pivoting slightly from that, what do you kind of think about the way things are going when it comes to like what you mentioned, like genetic engineering or ectogenesis, like the idea that we're going to be like potentially growing babies in like artificial wombs in the future and that sort of thing? Like, what's your kind of take on where that's going?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is what I love about biology, is there is so many really exciting real world links, and things are changing so fast, right? Even since I finished my degree in 2020, things have come a long way. The one thing I've learned as time goes on is to just never underestimate what we can do with science and research. I mean, look at where we are with AI and stuff like that. I mean, it's just crazy. So I think the potential for these things, I think the potential for treatments of different things is just crazy. And I would encourage anyone to just stay on top of the news. But also I think there is an importance of being able to, this is where topics like drug development and stuff comes in, where we teach students the stages of drug development, from the preclinical trials to the clinical trials and through that. And you do need that knowledge of how those things work to be able to see an article in the news, or we've got a new cure for this, and to actually realize that's at the preclinical trial stage and that sort of thing. But I think the potential for this sort of thing is huge. I mean, there's already things out there that we never would have thought would be happening. I mean, it's actually crazy when you think about it. There are some topics that I teach and we go back 100 years and we look at where we've learned about DNA and what we know about DNA and microscopes and things like that, which the Human Genome Project, for example, wasn't a thing 100 years ago. It was a very, very recent thing in the grand scheme of things. So you think how far we've come in the last 100 years, how far are we going to go in another 100 years? But we need to be careful as well, because you've got things like antibiotic resistance, for example, and I think that's an interesting one to look at, because at one point we had the introduction of antibiotics and that revolutionized medicine, right? But now we've got antibiotic resistance. Do you know what antibiotic resistance is?
So it's like where we have taken antibiotics over a certain period of time as a race, we're now getting to the point where some humans are having resistance to them and they're not being as effective.
Yeah, so it's the bacteria themselves become resistant to the antibiotics. So if you've got antibiotic resistant bacteria in you, then you take antibiotics and those bacteria won't be killed by them. And so then we get superbugs. So you might have heard of MRSA, things like that. And that is a huge, huge threat to medicine. And I think as much as there is so much potential for all of these really, really exciting developments, we've also got to look at where we are and think about where we're going with everything. I mean, links to the climate and all of that sort of thing. It's all very good having all of these advances, but we can't even look after the environment.
True.
So it's like...
Yeah, I feel like there probably is a lot of pressure on the people who are doing all the research on this sort of stuff. And I imagine there's a lot of people who aren't being listened to as well when it comes to actually giving good advice on what we should be paying more attention to based on science. There's probably people at the top who are just being boycotted by the system, I guess. But no, and when it comes to that sort of stuff as well, like, you know, the genetic engineering and things like that as well, like there's obviously like an ethical standpoint as well that I feel like probably is going to need to come in education as well, as to like what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, we do actually teach that. We do talk about that. So we teach genetic engineering at GCSE and at A Level, and we have a lot of conversations about the ethics of it. There's the standard argument that people talk about, the whole designer babies thing. You know, if we have genetic, but that's a very kind of obvious argument. But there's other things as well when we look at genetic engineering in crops, for example. You make crops that are resistant to certain things, right? But then there's a whole different lot of arguments, ethical issues to do with that in terms of the effects on the environment, the long-term impact on human health, but most importantly, the effects on the environment. And we do even talk about things like, you know, the kind of the global impact of this, of when certain companies... I'm not even going to go into that because I'll go off on one, but
yeah, I could say like that's a whole like can of worms we could probably get into. But there seems to be a lot. I think it's worse in America, where they are genetically modifying like food, a lot of food, and crops and that sort of stuff, which is I don't know how much do we really know about what like the food we're buying from supermarkets, but it's just a shame to think that it could have a sort of like lasting effect on our health.
I think that actually it's also a really exciting thing, though, because when we look at the world and we think about the potential that there is here for solving problems in the world.
But they're growing
with
meat
more
now.
Food, and I think that's a really, really exciting development, and I understand why people were also worried about the impacts on long-term health. But then look at the stuff that we're eating every day, ultra-processed food. The impacts of that on long-term health is a whole nother thing. So I think it would be unfair. I understand the worries about the impact of genetic engineering and that sort of thing on the food, but then you can't say that and also not be concerned about ultra-processed food. And there's so many problems with all of this thing, and this all comes down to the fact of why I love teaching biology, why I chose biology to teach, because actually, the more I talk about it, the more I think, no, you know what, there is a lot of things in the curriculum that are relevant. And yes, there are things that I would take out and maybe swap to have even more relevant things. But actually, there is a lot in there already. And I just wish that the education system at GCSEs and A levels allowed more of a kind of overall love for learning, rather than just do this to pass the exam. Because that's how I have to teach. I have to teach students. I have a big focus on exam technique and understanding the specific mark schemes and that sort of thing. But I wish it didn't have to be like that. I wish I could teach them about whales or, you know, something random like that, which is what I, at the moment, am really interested in. And learn a lot about just through listening to audiobooks and podcasts and research and that sort of thing. And I just wish that there was more of that. But that's what we have to do at the moment, given the system the way it is. You just got to get them through GCSEs and A levels, and then when they go off to uni, you do still have exams, but it's much more kind of very different, completely different way of learning. If you thrive at GCSE and A level, doesn't mean you're going to thrive at uni, and vice versa.
Yeah, I suppose it's not a one size fits all thing, and that's something that will hopefully be addressed as the education system evolves as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be big updates in the coming years.
Yeah. I've just had a flashback a second ago when you were talking about like genetic engineering. In one of the textbooks we had in science, GCSE, there was a picture of a mouse that had a human ear on the back. Is that still taught in schools these days?
I'm pretty sure that's fake.
Really?
I'm sure
it was in a textbook. I'm sure
yeah,
it was.
no, I'm sure I've taught this before, where I did a true or false thing, where I did like, what's an example of genetic engineering and what isn't. It's not genetic engineering isn't as simple as that. It's like you effectively cut a gene out of one organism, out of the DNA, and you're basically sticking it into another organism's DNA. So the kind of uses, the classic use of genetic engineering would be to make insulin. So you would take the human gene, which codes for it. It's basically got the instructions to make insulin, which is a protein. DNA is like a recipe book. a recipe as the gene, and you effectively cut it out and you put it into, say, bacteria, into the DNA there. And then, because the code is universal, the thing that codes for insulin in humans, the way in which that works is the same in bacteria. And so we're able to put that into bacteria, and then the bacteria can make insulin, and then that insulin can be harvested and purified and used to treat diabetes type 1.
Okay.
So they're more the kind of uses that we're talking about.
Yeah. Right, that's more practical use as opposed to growing an ear on the back of a mouse. What's he going to listen to through that human ear?
But also an ear it would need to be coded for, but I mean this whole complex system. It's not like one gene codes for an ear as well. So
how that would work.
Don't think that sounds.
It's just really interesting hearing you say there about like coding. Like it's almost like we've gone full circle, like because we are biological machines. And it's like we've gone full circle, and now we're creating real machines with coding as well. It's like there are a lot of parallels between that and kind of where we're going, building artificial life and technology at the moment.
Yeah, one thing that really interests me actually is the links between the subjects. So you can't just, so many scientists are not just maybe focused on biology, but when we're looking at developing different things, you need people with a biology background, with a physics background, with a maths background, with a art and design background. And I wish that within the curriculum there was more space to have that linking between subjects, because biology isn't just biology. You've got so many different things brought into that, and that's completely unrelated to what you said, but I think the thing of putting people into a box and saying, right, you do biology now, well, why can't that person also be really arty and really creative, or really into maths, or really into writing, for example, science communication? There's so many links between all the different subjects.
Yeah, and you clearly are, I mean, I've learned more about it today, but you clearly are someone who does kind of span that creative map, as well as being someone who can do like biology and have an interest in other sort of topics like that, and kind of bring them all together as well, which is nice to see.
Yeah, that's why I like biology. I just think it lends itself to that, which is, as much as something like maths was always my best subject in school until biology, I became better at that. But I think I just love the links, and that's ultimately what keeps me in this career in education, is that creative side of it, and trying to come up with ways to engage the kids and coming up with different ways to teach things, different activities. It's great, and I love that. And I love the job that I do. I love the career that I'm in. I couldn't think of anything else that I would rather be doing at the moment.
That's really nice to hear, and you're doing a very good job.
Thanks.
So well done once again. Before we wrap it up, I wanted to ask you if there is like any interesting facts which people might not know about the human body that you could share with us today. Like something like, I don't know, because you hear that these things, I believe that there is more to us than we understand. You hear people about, picking up energies from people, and like certain smells and stuff can trigger reactions in our bodies. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be about humans, but it just something in biology. There could be some kind of fact out there which we might be interested to know that you could share with us.
I think one of the most interesting things is bacteria in the gut.
Okay, yeah, very topical.
And the fact that when we think about medicines and when we think about how the body works, we focus on the human cells, when actually the bacteria in the gut are doing so much, and there's more. I'm pretty sure you've got more bacterial cells in your body than you even have got human cells, and it's the link with those and different diseases. It's a really, really interesting area of research, and I think so relevant for everyone in terms of how many people do you know with different things. Actually, there's so many different diseases that could originate in the gut. I think that's something that I find really interesting.
There's a lot to that. I've heard like the gut can dictate how like we think and how we feel. All this sort of stuff is all linked to it. And what you're saying about bacteria there as well. Like we seem to have this drive to eradicate all bacteria from our lives when it's actually good to be kind of surrounded by parts of bacteria, and the people who live in the more sterile environments are the ones who generally get ill more often as well.
Yeah, I think the bacteria are important to us. We need a certain gut bacteria, and bacteria are everywhere. They're everywhere in your body. And I think that I wish that more people realize that not all bacteria is bad. We've got ones that are really good, and you've got ones that aren't good as well, but it also comes down to the balance between the two of them. But we need our gut bacteria, and you need them. The foods that you eat affect that, and you want that right balance there.
Is that the microbiome?
Yeah.
There you go. See?
Love
I do know biology.
There we go.
This is great.
We'll get you teaching biology with Lewis.
Yeah.
So is that the next
let's
thing?
do it. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, amazing. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. Really good to chat to you, Olivia. I really enjoyed speaking with you today and learning some things, and hopefully the viewers did at home as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for coming all the way down here to do this.
We'll do it again soon, and we'll go on to we'll go into the can of worms all about like the system and everything else we didn't get to cover today.
Yeah, we've got so much that we could talk about. I think we just scratched the surface.
For sure. I've got a lot of notes, but perfect. Let's do it again sometime.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.